I am very pleased to introduce our first internship presentation of the day by Elizabeth Allen. Elizabeth got her undergraduate degree from University of California at Los Angeles in marine science with a minor in environmental science. Don't let that fool you. She is really into plants, as I discovered. Having her not only in my classes, but also working with her on a 699 class, that's to say an independent study project. And I think we'll hear a bit about that today. The one thing I'll say about Elizabeth, and I know she'll be a little embarrassed to hear this, like me, she is a huge Star Wars fan. Don't worry, she is not dressed in Mandalorian armor for this presentation. But I am thrilled to introduce Elizabeth to hear about her Mauka to Makai journey in this program. Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako, and welcome to the second session of the TCBES internship final presentations. My name is Elizabeth Allen, and my presentation today is on my graduate school journey through Mauka to Makai habitat restoration of Kīpuka forests, Anchialine pools, and coastal habitat in Hawaiʻi. I'll give a little background on myself. I was born and raised in California, and I earned my bachelor's degree in marine biology with a minor in environmental science from UCLA in 2022. Since then, my path has been anything but straight. I essentially worked my way up the watershed. I began in the ocean studying nutrient runoff and harmful algal blooms in Landing Marine Labs, but I quickly realized that as much as I love the ocean does not quite agree with me. Unfortunately, I get epically seasick. As a matter of fact, in that picture on the left, I did lose my lunch about 10 minutes after. So with that in mind, I worked my way into freshwater with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, surveying salmon spawning success, as well as doing invasive species removal. And then I eventually settled down doing habitat restoration work in wetlands with the Central Coast Wetlands Group and Watsonville Wetlands Watch around the Monterey Bay area. Through all these experiences, I came to understand that water is more than just a resource. It is the thread that sews together the tapestry of life from the mountains to the sea. After a few years of working in the field, I realized there was still so much that I didn't know, so I began thinking seriously about graduate school, and the question became, where? As I reflected on that question, my mind turned to my undergraduate years when I participated in a field study program on Hawaiʻi Island. We spent a full quarter circumnavigating the island, immersing ourselves in the rich biodiversity of both marine and terrestrial environments. Most deeply was how Hawaiian culture is built around the concept of malama aina, caring for the land that sustains you so that people and nature can thrive together in lasting balance. With that guiding principle in mind, I found myself drawn to the TCBES program at Hilo for its emphasis on culturally informed and community-driven conservation. In particular, I was inspired by the concept of Mauka to Makai management, which is like a more holistic approach that treats a landscape as a connected whole rather than fragmenting it along property lines. That is exactly the kind of work that I wanted to do for my degree. In practice, however, property line boundaries do make it difficult to find a single internship that spans a whole watershed, but this island is home to countless extraordinary organizations doing extraordinary work, and I was able to find 3 whose missions collectively helped me explore habitat restoration from the montane rainforest all the way to the coastline. I was also incredibly fortunate that this journey brought me to 3 mentors who are remarkable mana wahine, women whose knowledge, leadership, and aloha for this aina shaped everything that I learned along the way. Mauka, with my internship with Pūʻā Foundation, is a 501c3 nonprofit established in 1996 through a reconciliation effort by the Hawaiʻi Conference Foundation of the United Church of Christ in acknowledgement for their role in the 1893 overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Pūʻā Foundation's core mission is to address the overrepresentation of Native Hawaiian women within the criminal justice system by providing resources, training, and support to help women transition from incarceration back into their communities. The organization is led by Toni Bissen, an incredible leader who graciously agreed to serve as my mentor despite her many commitments. Throughout her career, Toni has worked tirelessly to empower women to reconnect with their culture and their communities. And now she's channeling that same energy into building a habitat restoration and environmental education program on Pūʻā Foundation's lands. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work for her. Aside the funds given to establish the organization, Pūʻā Foundation was also bequeathed a 13-acre parcel of native Hawaiian rainforest. Combined with an adjacent 900 acres retained by the United Church of Christ, this land became Punahou Heritage Forest. Located about 10 miles Mauka of Hilo on the slopes of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa along south. This is a mosaic of environments from early pioneer scrub on lava flows from the 1855 Mauna Loa eruption to well-developed forest Kīpuka, which are remnant pockets of native old-growth forests surrounded by younger. The Kīpuka were such an excellent example of intact native rainforest that UH classes would often go on Puaka'i up there to teach students about native Hawaiian plants and forest structure. Additionally, this forest is part of the Kumohuhali'i, the critical zone of montane wet forest that attracts rainfall and feeds the watersheds that sustain all life downstream. And before I go any further, I do want to take a moment to bring you all into Punahou Heritage Forest. So I want to share a mele written by my mentor Toni that is dedicated to this special place. Na pana kea o Punahou, na hoa o Ka'ula'au. Alapaio, io ka io kaha te ho I kamalie. Ola. I hope that gives you a little bit of a sense of what it's like to be in that forest. But now, unfortunately, I must share the sad news. Beginning in 2016, rapid ohia death, a disease caused by a ceratocystis fungus that sickens ohia trees, was detected in Punahou Heritage Forest, and over the following years, it caused near complete mortality of the old-growth ohia canopy within the Kīpuka. Largely spared, likely because the fungus spread through frail ungulates that scrape against tree trunks, and they tend to avoid the uneven, rocky lava terrain. So with the canopy gone, the Kīpuka were quickly colonized by invasive species such as strawberry guava and Clydemia. So in response, Pūʻā Foundation committed to actively restoring this land back to its former state. Given that about 2,000 acres is a significant undertaking for a small nonprofit, the decision was made to start with a small project. And by small, I still mean big. So here's Kīpuka 12. It's a 4-acre Kīpuka. It's the smallest of the main Kīpuka within the forest and is an ideal starting point because it has easy access from Saddle Road, making it a promising site for educational visits for Keiki and Kipuna alike. Following a restoration plan developed by Forest Solutions, Inc., our goals were to fence the Kīpuka to protect it from ungulate disturbance, remove invasive vegetation, and replant with native forest species. Ultimately, Pūʻā Foundation envisions a loop trail where cultural practitioners can gather plants for hula, lomi, la'au, and lei making. One of my first tasks was conducting vegetation surveys to assess the condition of the forest. I established 3 Braun Blanquet plots within Kīpuka 12, measuring the proportion of native versus non-native species and evaluating the structure of vegetation from canopy to ground cover. This analysis revealed that invasive vegetation is concentrated in the western section of Kīpuka 12 near plot 1, while the eastern section remains largely native dominated. This is likely because the soil in the western part is more developed and suitable for invasive species, whereas the rocky soil of the eastern section is more favorable for our hardy native species. This spatial information helps us direct our more aggressive weed control to areas where it is needed most. I also helped draft the permit application for the fencing of Kīpuka 12. This process gave me a valuable hands-on experience navigating the Hawaii County permitting system. And the fence was successfully installed in the fall of last year, so the Kīpuka is now protected from further ungulate disturbance. The next phases of invasive species removal and native replanting will follow when Pūʻā Foundation has the capacity for that work as we continue to build. In addition, I helped to draft a conservation easement contract between Pūʻā Foundation and PONC, the Public Access, Open Space, and Natural Resources Preservation Commission, which is a department of the County of Hawaii. This legally binding agreement allows Pūʻā Foundation to retain ownership of the land while requiring that it remain in its natural state in perpetuity. While this has always been Pūʻā Foundation's intention, the formal agreement with the county means that PONC now shares the responsibility for ensuring that Punahou Heritage Forest is never developed. The next chapter in Pūʻā Foundation's restoration mission is the development of a native plant nursery to grow plants for outplanting back into the forest. So the foundation purchased a 1-acre property in Kaumana City, just a few miles from the forest, which will serve multiple purposes, including housing the native plant nursery, hosting workshops on native Hawaiian practices such as hula, la'au, lafa'au, lomi, dye making, and lei making, as well as welcoming field trips and school groups, and providing a healing retreat for justice-involved women transitioning back into community life. To help inform the nursery design, I visited conservation greenhouses at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, Three Mountain Alliance, and Hakalau Forest National Wildlife Refuge. And the greenhouse kit we designed has since been delivered and is expected to be constructed within the coming months. There's also a seed bank and educational building that is already under construction and scheduled for completion in April. Although the greenhouse is not yet built, Pūʻā Foundation is already laying the groundwork for future growing. Last summer, the Akaka Foundation donated 10 ohia trees that are selective for resistance to rapid ohia death. These trees are grown through a U.S. Forest Service project in which seeds are collected from ohia that survived rot outbreaks, and the resulting seedlings are then intentionally exposed to the ceratocystis fungus. Those that survive are identified as rot resistant. These 10 trees were donated to Pūʻā Foundation in part because federal funding cuts had limited Akaka Foundation's ability to continue maintaining them. All 10 were planted in what we call the living kuahu, a living altar at the educational site, as a lasting symbol of hope and resilience. These trees have already produced flowers and thousands of seeds, some of which have been returned to the Akaka Foundation for seed trials to determine whether their offspring also carry resistance. If they do, Pūʻā Foundation is poised to grow a new generation of rot-resistant trees and begin building a more resilient forest. Invite you down to the coast. I have always been drawn to wetland ecosystems, so I was immediately captivated when I first learned about Anchialine pools, which I hadn't heard of before coming to Hawaii Island. For those unfamiliar, Anchialine pools are landlocked ponds with no surface connection to other water bodies. They're fed entirely by a mixture of fresh and saline groundwater percolating through porous volcanic rock. While these habitats are rare globally, Hawaiʻi Island hosts the highest concentration of Anchialine pools in the world, a direct consequence of the island's uniquely porous geology. These pools support a remarkable diversity of life, including shrimps, crabs, eels, cyanobacteria, snails, damselflies, and many water birds, some of which are found nowhere else on Earth. Because their salinity fluctuates with groundwater dynamics and can drop as low as 1 part per thousand, Anchialine pools historically also served as vital sources of drinking water for both ancient Hawaiians and wildlife in areas lacking surface streams. Here's a diagram that illustrates how this dynamic works between the fresh and saline groundwater. Hawaii face serious threats, coastal development, the influx of sediment, nutrients, and chemical pollutants all degrade water quality. Non-native fish, such as guppies and tilapia, that are introduced either intentionally as fishing bait or accidentally through aquarium releases, prey on native invertebrates, particularly the opaiula, small red shrimp that are endemic to Hawaiian Anchialine pools. Despite the efforts of multiple organizations working to protect and restore these ecosystems, Anchialine pools remain significantly under-researched and under-resourced. Wildlife Fund, a small community-driven nonprofit dedicated to protecting coastal ecosystems on Maui and Hawaiʻi Island through hands-on conservation, educational outreach, and legislative advocacy. My mentor was Megan Lamson, president of Hawaii Wildlife Fund and director of Hawaiʻi Island programs. Megan is a koa wahine who leads by example and has a true gift for building community, and that spirit is reflected in everything Hawaii Wildlife Fund does. On Hawaiʻi Island, Hawaii Wildlife Fund concentrates its efforts on the Waiohinu coastal strand, which is the shoreline stretch of the Camilo section of the Ka'u Forest Reserve. This remarkable and remote coastline, which takes nearly an hour and a half to reach via a rough four-wheel drive road, represents one of the most intact examples of native coastal habitat remaining on Hawaiʻi Island. Hawaii Wildlife Fund began stewarding this area in 1998, driven by the staggering volume of marine debris washing ashore from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch each year. Ocean current patterns funnel enormous quantities of plastic waste onto this coastline, creating serious hazards for wildlife. When Hawaii Wildlife Fund first arrived, marine debris was piled knee-deep in many places. Since then, through the dedication of community volunteers, over 370 tons of debris have since been removed. And these community cleanup days remain central to Hawaii Wildlife Fund's work. Hawaii Wildlife Fund stewards the Ho'onoa Anchialine pools, a complex of 2 main pools near Camilo Point. In the past, the organization has hosted volunteer days to remove invasive vegetation around the pools and dredge accumulated muck that impedes groundwater circulation. Efforts to remove invasive tilapia from these pools has been delayed by the permitting process, so I was not able to work directly in that restoration work. However, Hawaii Wildlife Fund maintains partnerships with a network of organizations that also steward Anchialine pools. So through those organizations, Okay. The first opportunity was with the Hawaii State Department of Land and Natural Resources at the Ka'elehuluhulu Anchialine pools in Kekahakai State Park. These pools had been successfully treated for invasive species in previous years, but had more recently been reinfested with guppies. Because guppies are no more than an inch long and are difficult to net due to their speed, we employed a carbon dioxide diffusion method to temporarily stun the fish. At low tide, we pumped CO2 gas into the water and then covered the pool with a plastic tarp to trap the gas for approximately an hour until the pH dropped to around 5. at which point the guppies became sluggish enough to remove by hand netting. The guppies were dispatched humanely by immersion in ice water, and about 440 fish were captured on the first day. We waited 2 weeks to allow the remaining guppies to grow a little bit larger and easier to catch, then conducted a second treatment yielding fewer than 200 fish. The photo on the right shows me and my mentor, Megan, and her baby teal on her back, wading through the mud to catch guppies. It's hard work and it's pretty dirty too, but it can be a lot of fun and it's really rewarding. Just a week and a half after the second treatment, something remarkable happened. The endemic Opaiula were spotted in the pools once again. Their swift return makes sense upon reflection. Even though they hadn't been seen recently, the shrimp never really left. They had persisted in the underground passages of the pool system and stayed hidden during daylight hours to avoid predation from the fish. Once that pressure was removed, they resumed their natural surface behavior almost immediately, which just shows you how resilient these delicate ecosystems can be. Hawaii Wildlife Fund also partners with Hui Aloha Kiholo, a community-driven nonprofit that stewards the local Anchialine pools and rich cultural resources of the Wahipana Kiholo. We focused on the smallest pool in the Waia LP Anchialine Pool Complex, a site with a history similar to the Ka'ele Hulu Hulu pools, but with the added complication of invasive tilapia alongside the guppies. We again used the CO2 diffusion and tarping method over 2 consecutive treatment days, and I don't remember exactly what the total was, but I think it was in the thousands of fish that were removed. So to give a sense of scale for the challenge here, the photo on the left shows a larval guppy on my fingernail. These are nearly transparent and almost impossible to see in the water. They require quite painstaking effort to remove them, but removing them is important because the reproductive cycle is so rapid. In about 2 to 3 weeks, they can produce more babies of their own. So without consistent and thorough treatment, the invasive population can cycle right back. So in addition to my Anchialine pool work, I was also really eager to develop my seed collection process and skills. Through Hawaii Wildlife Fund's connections, I was able to volunteer with Hawaii Volcanoes National Park on their seed collection efforts in Kīpuka Mamane, park unit near Ocean View in Ka'u. This old-growth Kīpuka contains a diverse assemblage of native dry forest species. National Park staff trained me in seed collection techniques as well as data collection procedures using Survey 123 and ArcGIS field maps. The purpose of this effort is to build a seed bank of critical native species as an insurance policy against wildfire. In recent years, fire frequency and intensity have increased across the Hawaiian Islands due to the spread of fire-adaptive invasive grasses, longer and more severe droughts, strong winds, and human-caused ignition. Wildfire is especially damaging in Hawaii because most native plants evolved in a fire-free environment and have limited capacity to regenerate after a major burn. Preserving seeds of these species before a fire strikes is therefore essential for post-disturbance recovery. During this time, I also had the opportunity to visit the Volcanoes National Park Seed Bank, where I learned about seed processing and preservation methods that are directly applicable to my work collecting seeds in Pūʻā heritage forests as well. And finally, we arrive at the water's edge. This last project came together in the most serendipitous way. Last summer, I attended the Hawaii Conservation Conference on Oahu, participated in the Pūlama Kuamo'o mentorship program for early career professionals. Dr. Taylor, the Director of Conservation for the Hawaii and Palmyra chapter of the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy is among the world's most influential conservation organizations, and the Hawaii and Palmyra chapter in particular has been a national model for biocultural restoration that honors Indigenous knowledge, so I was excited to make this connection. Trevor was an invaluable resource throughout the conference, helping me network with professionals from across the field who share my passion for habitat restoration. One of those connections was Tamara Farnsworth, the Nature Conservancy's Coastal Resilience Project Manager for Maui. Tamara and I bonded over our shared love for coastal habitat restoration, and after some correspondence, we designed a 699 directed study project with my UH faculty advisor, Dr. John Price. Tamara is a leader in the Oluwalu Road to Resilience project, which engages the West Maui community in planning for sea level rise adaptation along the Oluwalu-Ukumehame coastline. This process has involved a series of public meetings where community members and stakeholders can learn about the project, share their ike and mana'o. The voices of kapuna and lineal descendants from these apu Pūʻā were especially vital because they shared memories in Mo'olelo of what this coastline once looked like before the extensive erosion and ecological degradation of the area. The catalyst for this project is the planned inland realignment of Honoa Pi'ilani Highway, the primary road in and out of West Maui. As the map shows, the stretch between Oluwalu and Ukumehame runs directly on the shoreline, basically on the beach, and sea level rise has driven accelerated coastal erosion in this area, causing significant loss of beach width. The road regularly floods during king tides and storm events, and the resulting undercutting threatens its structural integrity. A new bypass road will be constructed further inland, and the existing road will eventually be decommissioned. But beyond the road realignment, the Nature Conservancy is trying to explore how nature-based solutions can protect the shoreline and enhance ecological function simultaneously. Vegetation is central to that approach as it plays a critical role in shoreline stabilization. The images here illustrate the degraded condition of this area. Invasive kiawe trees dominate the landscape, and many have toppled due to erosion, creating hazards for beachgoers. Unregulated vehicle access to the beach further compounds this problem by disturbing the substrate and preventing the growth of stabilizing beach plants. The image on the right shows wave action actively eroding the edge of the highway and washing road material into the ocean. Highway materials such as asphalt contain compounds that are dangerous for marine life, and also often carry toxic elements such as lead, cadmium, and cobalt from vehicle pollution. Although it remains unknown how these chemicals affect coral reefs, eroded road material is visibly mixing with the beach sand and likely contributes to nearshore water quality impairments. Much of this damage could be avoided or at least significantly mitigated if native vegetation were restored and vehicle access controlled. The image on the left shows the dominant plant in this area, invasive pickleweed, which forms large mats across the sand. While it may appear to be stabilizing the shoreline, pickleweed is actually a poor sand trapper. Notice how in the middle of the patch, there is a deep depression because only the outer edges are actually holding sand, and the middle sand really isn't being captured. In contrast, there are small isolated patches of the native kuli in the image on the right, even though these patches are limited because they're outcompeted by the pickleweed. You can see that they form distinct microdunes that trap sediment effectively and help to protect the shoreline by buffering wave energy. Finally, for my project, I designed a pilot study to test the effectiveness of native beach vegetation restoration as a shoreline resilience strategy. I began with a site visit alongside Tamara and Wes Kryl, a coastal dune restoration specialist from the UH Sea Grant College program who collaborated on the project. Together, we identified 2 candidate restoration sites, Ukumehame Beach Park and the area near mile marker 14, against a set of success criteria, including active erosion, protection from vehicle trampling, and safe access. We selected Ukumehame Beach Park as the pilot site. Next came a literature review to identify best practices, but I quickly discovered that published research on this type of coastal restoration in Hawaii is very limited. So I supplemented the literature by reaching out directly to coastal restoration managers from Molokai Land Trust, Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission, Maui County Dune Crew, and Sea Grant, who had completed similar projects to learn from their firsthand experience. Drawing on all these resources, I developed a comprehensive restoration plan covering site preparation, a detailed planting scheme, and protocols for long-term monitoring and maintenance. Planting plan includes 2 test plots. Plot 1 is located in a sandy area with an existing pickleweed patch to test the difficulty of removing that species and successfully establishing native plants in its place. Plot 2 is sited in an area with a more clay-rich substrate to assess how well native beach plants perform in those soil conditions. This is important because alluvial deposition from the nearby Ukamehame and Ulawalu streams have left a clay layer beneath the sand along much of the coastline. Both plots include the same plant palette of 4 hardy, locally sourced native beach species that are already present in the area, with 350 plants per plot for a total of 700. All plant material was grown by the Maui Native Nursery using Maui-sourced plant stock to preserve local genotypes. Next, with the restoration plan in hand, our next step was permitting and compliance. I worked closely with Wes Corral from Sea Grant, who also works within the Maui County Planning Department to complete the required permit applications. Permitting process was, as many of us know, more time-consuming than writing the plan itself, but with Wes's guidance, we navigated it successfully, and I sure learned a lot. And I am proud to share that we completed the planting just last week. So site preparation was a multi-day effort. Pickleweed, it turns out, is remarkably stubborn to remove from a clay-rich sediment because the roots just grip onto that dense soil. Clearing that site took 2 full days and many willing hands. There are also some small kiawe trees and larger stumps that need to be sawed down and removed for safety. So plot 1 was by far the most labor-intensive of the 2, given the density of the pickleweed. Plot 2 went relatively quickly because it only had scattered weeds. So here is a quick before and after plot 1. We absolutely could not have done it without the tremendous help of the Maui County Dune crew, so I want to give them a huge shout out and mahalo for their kokua on this project. And then finally, we come to the planting day. We were fortunate enough that the Kona storm that moved through Maui last week held off just long enough for us to get everything into the ground. We also installed post and rope fencing and signage to encourage visitors to stay out of the planting area during establishment. The plots may look a bit sparse now, but the prostrate ground cover species we planted are designed to spread across the sand over time, and with luck, the vegetation will eventually cover the entire plot and perhaps even extend beyond the fencing. To track progress, the plots will be monitored through quarterly drone surveys to measure changes in vegetation cover and biannual LiDAR surveys to track sand accumulation over time. Each plot also has a permanent photo monitoring station, essentially a picture frame with a hole cut out, positioned so that visitors can snap a photo from a consistent angle using their phone and submit it through a simple Google form. This approach lets us track changes in the plots over time while simultaneously engaging the public in the restoration process. Ultimately, we hope that the knowledge gained from this pilot project will help guide future coastal restoration efforts on Maui and carry all of us toward a more resilient future. As I reach the end of my time as a graduate student, I find myself overwhelmed with gratitude. A little in awe of how this journey has unfolded. When I first arrived in Hilo, all I knew was that I wanted to do meaningful work, and what I did not fully anticipate was how profoundly the people I would meet along the way would shape me. Through these internships, I have had the privilege of working alongside some of the most dedicated, brilliant, and passionate individuals and organizations I have ever encountered. From my mentors, Toni, Megan, and Tamara, to the volunteers, community members, and fellow conservationists who show up again and again for this aina, I have been continuously inspired. Most importantly, I feel that I have gained something that I could not have found in a classroom alone, a deep, hands-on understanding of habitat management in forest Kīpuka, caught guppies and Anchialine pools, collected seeds in old growth forests, and planted native species on an eroding coastline. And through all of it, I have come to understand in a very real way how everything in this landscape is connected. I am so grateful to the TCBES program, my cohort, to Hilo, to the countless organizations I have worked with for giving me the opportunity to learn, grow, and contribute. Mahalo nui loa. So for folks on Zoom, the question was, how do I weave in like culture and science into this Mauka to Makai journey, and what I see the future for that in restoration? For me, it really was water. Water was this common thread I found that connected everything, rainforest to the pools, down to the ocean. And I think that is a main theme in Hawaiian culture as well. The concept of vai is wealth and prosperity, and the importance of water. So I didn't really talk about it that much, but I am really excited about the watershed partnerships in Hawaii. That's something that I haven't seen on the mainland before, where all these groups are coming together to kind of realize that dream of bringing back that landscape level Pūʻā style of management. So the question is, have we checked on the plants after the storm? But I haven't heard anything, so I think no news is good news on this one.